Accessing Secure Channel. The Agent Files, where aspiring agents rise and masters flourish. Powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Mission initiated. File loading.
Hi there, this is Peter Fan for Agent Builder Coaching in our Aspiring Agent podcast. Today we're going to talk about the cost of doing business, and in particularly the cost of getting into the business. We'll touch a little bit on the ongoing expenses as well, but unfortunately, this is one of these businesses where you do need to spend a fair amount of money before you can potentially make any money whatsoever. Right? There's the pre-licensing costs. Anyway, we'll talk about all of that stuff, and we're going to break down all of those costs, any kind of hidden costs. We're also going to talk about some opportunities a little bit that fit within those expenses. So maybe it helps you in preparing better for making the right decision in your particular situation, and maybe see whether or not there is ways to optimize things a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to cover is some startup costs in BC in particular, but again, you can nationalize this quite easily because the costs are not dramatically different from one province to the next to the next. The same applies with, your ongoing and annual expenses and partially monthly expenses. And the same kind of virtually applies to most of the commission splits and structures. And how are you going to deal with cash flow? It is a business after all, right? So that's what we're going to cover today. All right. So let's talk a little bit about ongoing expenses before we get into the real nitty-gritty of the cost of getting into the business. Inevitably, in your day-to-day, week-to-week, monthly operations, you're going to see expenses that are fairly typical, but they're not necessarily, they're typical for us as being in the business, but they, from the outside looking in, may not be so obvious. Okay. The obvious ones are things like your cell phone and your car, and those are typical things. But there's this inevitably there's expenses that deal with your mandatory ongoing education. Right, every 2 years you have to have about 21 credits that you need to have to collect by way of attending various programs. Some are done through the regulator, some are done through the associations and real estate boards. They need to total a certain number of hours. The ones regulated by the regulator are typically 2 courses, each taking about, a whole day per course. But most importantly, they will cost you somewhere around $300 to $500 per course, depending on how extensive it is and how crazy BCFSA gets. Then there is the courses through the real estate board, and on average, they'll cost you about between $150 to $200. So they're expenses that are part and parcel of that. And yes, we call them professional development, but you do need to kind of build them in. Then thinking about your brokerage doesn't necessarily always have a fee attached to it. However, they may charge you certain things in a flat fee that basically offer a service somewhere else. For example, I'm with a brokerage where they, as part of our monthly fees, it includes a subscription to the Do Not Call list. Well, that's not something that you would typically individually do, but it is an important piece to be compliant with, making sure that you don't phone people that you're not supposed to phone, right? That are on the Do Not Call list, and therefore can prevent a lot of fines and problems. We include things like a program where we can scan our deposit checks on our phone, and it is automatically deposited into the company's trust account. That saves you a lot of time, effort, and energy, and it is our preferred way of dealing with trust deposits. Okay, there is a cost to that, but it's built into our monthly fee, which within our company is about $156 or so. Then it also gives you access to your website and your CRM, as well as your Canva Pro, which is really handy for marketing tools and what have you. So yes, there is a fee, but you actually get a whole lot of value out of that fee. So you got to think about that, because you're going to spend money on some of those things otherwise independently. So yes, their monthly fees. Are they the brokerage fees, or are they a cost of doing business that you would otherwise have anyways, right? And then you have things like marketing and lead generation. Now, some people actually do paid advertising and print advertising, Google ads, Facebook ads, that kind of stuff. But general marketing, you're still going to do. You're going to have some flyers. If you take a listing, you got photography, you got video, you got floor plans, title searches, all of those things. And some people still think that, that's done by the brokerages. It's not. I can't recall seeing in the last 15, 20 years any brokerage that takes on that expense on behalf of the agents. It's sometimes possible to run the bill through the company so that it looks like it's being paid for by the company, but then it's on your accounts receivables, and really you don't want to have your accounts receivables with the company be high, because it ties you to things, and it becomes a bit of an anchor, so to speak. And then, of course, you do have fuel and lunch expenses, staging cost, getting from A to B, attending open houses, things like signage, and so on and so forth. So there's lots of ongoing expenses. And in the beginning, those are a little bit higher because you do everything for the first time, right? So it is a bit more imposing initially. Now, brokerages will have fees and splits, and the good old notion of the all sizes are the same with different brokerages. That's not the case anymore. There's so many different models. It's actually hardly possible to cover them all. But yes, there are desk fee models where you only pay a flat fee per deal and a flat fee per month, typically a combination thereof. And that can be advantageous if you are a solid producer. In the beginning, you want to have your monthly fees as low as possible. And that typically then is offset with a slightly more expensive split on whatever commissions that you earn. So let's pick a $10,000 commission check, depending on your split or your structure with your company. You would net anywhere between $6,000 to maybe $8,000 out of that deal. And if you're on a strictly desk fee model, then there would be a deal fee most likely, plus your monthly desk fee. They call it desk fee. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's some sort of a fancy desk for you there. It just means that it's a monthly affiliation. Okay, it's an old-fashioned term because they used to attach it to you having some sort of a space in a location. And that's another part to really consider. It's not for today's topic, but is it important for you to have a physical space in a location? Knowing that of most realtors spend less than 10% of their business time in the real estate office. And nor should they be, right? Because the business is where the people are. The business is not in the office. So that's a whole discussion for another day. Anyway, so cash is oxygen, run out, and the business dies. It's simple as that, right? You need to have some reasonable expectation of success, and you need to have some reserve. So budgeting and balancing your budget is a really important part, because that pressure, that stress that comes with a depleted cash flow or depleted budget is a real problem for many people. So I have to say a lot of people start this business with literally not enough money. Okay, and that's an unfortunate part that people just kind of ignore. So let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the some of the core skills parts. In British Columbia, to get your license takes 3 or 4 parts. So you have the pre-licensing course in BC. That's somewhere between, it's always a moving scale, but right now I think it's about $1,500 to get into the pre-licensing course. Okay, this is October 2025. So you check the BCFSA website, because it is a fee that tends to go up almost yearly now. Okay, don't know how they managed to do that, but because they haven't really improved or done anything with the course in particular, but they see it as a cash cow nowadays. So, all right, so that's your pre-licensing course, but that doesn't give you a license. Okay, before you can even apply for your license, you then have to do the applied practice course, and that's another $900. So now you're upwards to $2,400. Then you need to apply for your license, and that between your license and your errors and emissions insurance is another, $1,500-$1,600. So you're talking somewhere around $4,000. That's just through BCFSA and getting licensed. Then you need to become a member of a local real estate board. Now, there's a number of real estate boards in each province. In BC, we're down to 7 because of some mergers, and then there is even now some talk of some more mergers of real estate boards. But there's an interior board of BC Northern. You have Chilliwack, the Fraser Valley, Vancouver. With the Fraser Valley and Vancouver, clearly the largest of the 2 boards. Then there is a Powell River Real Estate Board, which is a very small board, as is Chilliwack technically, as far as numbers of members. Okay. And then there is, on the island, you have the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board, and you have the Victoria Real Estate Board. So each will have, depending on which board you're a member in, you can only be a member of one board at a time. So they typically have some form of an initiation fee, and then you have your ongoing expenses. So the initiation fee can be anywhere between $500 to $1,000. There's a few where they've kind of gone away with the initiation fee and rolled in a slightly higher monthly fee. The monthly fee typically pays for your basic access to the board's services. And then if you take a listing, there typically is a bit of a success fee. And on transactions, there's a little bit of a fee there as well. And some boards, it's a percentage. Some boards, it's a flat fee. So again, you need to look into that, and it's important things to know. And then, like I said, you have your costs with your office, whether that is a recovery fee for technology, resources, and services, whether it's a DIS fee or whether it's a transactional driven fee. Okay, so those are some of the fees to think about. Now, your errors and emissions insurance is part of your licensing fee. There are some, like I said, within your board fees, you also pay for things like BCREA, the British Columbia Real Estate Association, and CREA, the Canadian Real Estate Association. So they're deemed to be voluntary memberships, but you can't operate without it. So I don't know why they still call it voluntary, because it's pretty mandatory from where I'm sitting. Okay. I hope that makes some sort of sense. So, it's important that you understand the fee structures, right? So before you get licensed, I would say you're probably out $6,000-$7,000, depending on how much stuff you need yourself. Some people need a computer, a cell phone, they need some other bits and pieces. And then there's, of course, some preparatory expenses for maybe business cards and signage and what have you. Now, the other thing I'm going to encourage you to think about and really budget for is things like your first, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months worth of operating expenses, and if need be, your living expenses. So, although $6,000 is actually a low cost of getting into any business, right? Just even if you're a carpenter, right? You go to apprentice school or a practical set of education, you get your certification, and then you got to get your tools and your setup and yada 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 all in place. Then you've got to start promoting yourself. So it's no business to start up with is cheap necessarily. I don't even want to compare it with retail. Just think about it now. You can have a space and shelving and equipment and inventory, all of that stuff. Well, real estate, the inventory are the houses, so you don't necessarily have to worry about the inventory. It's already there. You can go sell any of that inventory all day long, of course. So, as starting a business, it's actually not an expensive business to start, but it does take some money to get in, and it takes some money to stay in without an assurance that you're going to get paid. And even if you're going to get paid, how fast are you going to get paid? So, again, not a scare tactic. It's the reality of it is that quite a few people have not spent enough time to properly budget that whole first 6 to 8 months in the business, and then literally run out of money before they run into business, right? So it's and that adds pressure and stress, and can make your relationship with family and even friends become very, very strenuous. So think this through, and really, one of the exercises that we're going to really encourage you to do is create a 1 year budget, right? Do the homework, do the research. We're giving you some indication as to where to look. Your provincial regulator will have their licensing and education costs. Your local boards and with provincial associations will have additional fees and expenses. And then as you do the research as to whatever brokers you want to affiliate with, with us it is as a fixed expense about 156, but you're going to run into very few additional mandatory expenses because a lot of the bits and pieces are built into. You're still going to have some, but you know, you know, even if you had no real serious expenses, right? You're going to have a car, you're going to have a cell phone, you're going to have internet services. Those are three right there. Then you have, some operational expenses in, business cards, maybe a cup of coffee with somebody, some signage, some I don't know, open house directional bits, flyers, brochures, photograph. It's very easy to spend $1,000 a month in this business. Very easy. It doesn't take much. Okay. And so those are things to keep in mind, right? So create yourself a budget, right? And start thinking about the obvious expenses, but then also start thinking about the hidden expenses, right? So, for example, and I'm not trying to, again, make this negative, but you have to think about what impact does you working or you having appointment with clients have on your family? Does that mean that you have to get a babysitter, or does it buggers up your access to being able to attend to appointments or scheduling issues? Does it add some cost in the whole maintenance because now you can't do it, but somebody else now has to do these things? So there are hidden bits and pieces to it that may become quite important. Okay. I always encourage people to have at least 6 months worth of living expenses before they start in this business, but you need to figure that out. And if your financial situation inside of your family, all your relations and your obligations is such that you can handle it with less, then so be it. Okay. I would also encourage you as you go through all of this exercise. If you're going to go through with it, then set up a dedicated real estate business account with your bank, um, preferably with a credit card as well. And then because it makes your accounting that much easier, right? Because all these expenses are tax deductible, so you got to keep an eye on them, right? And then one thing that so many agents forget, if you actually do go through this, pay attention to taxes, right? Not just income taxes, but even more immediate is just GST, right? When you start earning some money, you're going to collect GST. That's just the way it is. And you need to make contributions to your GST then on a quarterly basis, most likely very quickly on a quarterly basis. And forgetting that can be very painful in extra penalties and fees and what have you. So, all right. So, hope those things make some sort of sense. Now that comes in on top of, right, some of the other bits and pieces that you need to think about, because again, part of your expenses are going to learn about the business of real estate, right? These other skills that you need that I don't know what you know and what you don't know, right? If you have never sold as a trade, as a profession, then you need to learn about selling. Well, that takes time, effort, and a little bit of money. Same with client communication, compliance, and all of these bits and pieces will take some time and effort. Okay. So, like I said, create a first year budget. Um, in your budget, allow for upwards to 20% of unexpected expenses, stuff that you just didn't think of, but may or likely will happen in some level or another, right? Um, Calculate, what kind of survival amount you should have, right? How much money do I absolutely categorically need to make on a monthly basis in order to survive? And can I make that money in real estate or can I make it somewhere else? Okay. Again, these are pretty important pieces to the whole process. And um, there are some books around that you can think about, but, uh, in particularly, I would think about, some budgeting and financial planning type information and resources. Ask for our business plan, copy of our business plan. It will kind of make you start thinking in tune of how do I best prepare for these things. Although the business plan isn't the same as a budget, it definitely has some aspects to also think in a financial structure. We do have a spreadsheet for it. It is probably a bit overwhelming initially when you look at it as a not yet realtor because it was not created for that purpose. But we do have a copy of it, and you're more than welcome to it. It's not that we want to keep it from you. It's just may not be exactly what you need in the moment yet. Okay? So first and foremost, do your own homework. Do the stuff that you need. Um, we do have a bit of a budget template. It's okay. It'll help you. Um, there is a commission calculator sheet that we have produced, and you can tinker with it. You can play with it. So that's part of the resources in the resources kit. And then yes, read the your first year in real estate by Dave Zeller. This is what the book looks like. As a matter of fact, I've got it sitting right here. I'm not actually selling this. I'm not in the business of promoting books per se, although I grew up in the book business. I own a business, so I have a lot of books. But the point of reading is really get different perspectives, right? That book is a bit older at this point in time, and there are definitely some time issues with it in the sense that some of it has become a little dated. technology is your friend in real estate, and you can use technology in many different ways to lower your cost, uh, keep really good records, right? There's I don't know how many different online accounting and budgeting tools around. And make use of the technology that you're comfortable with, right? I'm, what am I, 69? I taught myself most of the technology that I use, but I'm finding myself, and this is something that is somewhat generational. I have a mobile phone. I use my mobile all the time. Deliberately have a large one, right, with two screens. Actually, yeah. It's got a wide screen, and then it's got another smaller screen. And the reason why I have it is because I just literally can't see the small screens, right? My eyesight is not that great, and so I use that, which is also the reason why I mostly work on a computer desktop. Yes, I have a laptop. Yes, I have a tablet, but for the most part, my default working platform is desktop computers. Well, many of the younger generations, not only do they not have a desktop, they oftentimes don't even have a laptop or a tablet anymore. They all work on their mobile. So thinking in practical terms requires you, me, and the people that you target to make adjustments to realizing that not everybody works on the same type of work environment anymore, right? In the good old bad old days, there was the difference between people that work on paper and people that work on a computer. Well, I think we're past that stage. I think most of us are now, in one way or another, computer connected, right? And in order to get government services and bank services and insurance services, you pretty much have to be on a computer in some way, shape, or form. But generationally, there definitely are some differences. So technology in that sense can be your friend, but it can also therefore become a bit of a challenge, right? Because we now start making assumptions and predictions as to how you and I use technology versus how your target audience uses technology, and in different contexts and in different useful and practical ways. Okay, so that's another consideration. And personally, as I'm sitting here, I'm obviously recording this with a little camera. I'm looking at one monitor, but I have three other monitors around me, and then I have a fifth monitor, which is basically a large TV that I can do displays on. So that works for me. Now I don't, because I record a bunch and I'm always looking at whatever is coming in, but also my scripts, my dialogues, my training materials, client information. If I'm working with buyers or sellers, I have lots of bits and pieces in front of me because that's how I think and work. I used to do that with hard copy paper. Now it's all digital, right? So how do you work can very much affect your budget, your cost of operations, your comfort zone in collecting and presenting stuff, and then you have to start recognizing that the people that you're dealing with, your target audience, your buyers, your sellers, may not be working in that fashion. So how do they work, and how do you connect to that then again? So it's all part and parcel of a fairly large and comprehensive assessment and evaluation for yourself as to, does my style, my personality, my being all fit in this business we call real estate? And I'm going to say 9 in 10 cases, yes, it does, because real estate is as individual and as unique as you make it to be. As long as you work with enough people and on a consistent base, that you have a realistic possibility of generating a solid cash flow on an ongoing basis. And that really comes back to the two words that we constantly talk about being, consistency and discipline. Consistency and discipline. Right? Applying what you know to do and then keep doing it. So, and that doesn't have to be expensive, by the way. So, if going to round out our discussion about real estate, real estate isn't a cheap and inexpensive business to be in. But if you're disciplined and consistent, then the cost of doing the lead generation and the business part actually isn't that expensive. The expenses are really in the licensing, relicensing. Some of the marketing stuff can be expensive, but you don't have to make it expensive. And yeah, there are sort of things that you can't get around, but still, if you can net somewhere between 45 to 50% of your commissions after all of your expenses are paid, you're doing pretty darn good, right? And then that's before taxes. Granted, you gotta in that equation I do ignore taxes, but then you're doing pretty darn good, right? So I'll leave you with this thought on that. Right, money management is an important part, and I really want you to think about that, and as we're going to talk about in the next episode as well. As a realtor, if you can get yourself in the first 6 months to get to an average of one transaction per month, okay, on average, one transaction per month. So that's after 6 months that you get to that point, and maybe pick up one or two deals in that first 6 months. That'd be great. So that you're after a year done 6 to 8 transactions in most parts of British Columbia, at least, and I'm going to say in most parts of Canada, that will pay your bills. It won't have returned your cost of all of the investments quite yet, but it will pay your ongoing bills. I'm fairly sure of that. Then if over the next year, so now we're talking 18 to 24 months, right, into that second year, at the end of that second year, if you can get it to 1.5 transactions per month on average, then you're starting to return all of the money of your investment and be able to start putting some money away for savings, because your cost won't go up. In fact, your cost will come down a bit over time. It will become easier to do whatever it is that you're doing in less time and less effort, less cost, less, right? Because after a while, it's not about you doing more. It's actually you doing the same, but losing fewer opportunities. You become more efficient, more effective, more capable, I suppose, competent in being able to do the sales part, do the converting part, do the closing part, to optimize your relationships to the point that you're not spending time with the people that are just quite frankly not ready to buy or sell, which is fine. That doesn't make them bad people. It just means that you start to realize that you can't convert everybody, and you don't need to. You just need to spend time with the people that do need your services now, and a little bit less with people that don't need your services now. Doesn't mean that you ignore them completely, right? So, which is actually your biggest investment, is in time management. They don't make more time. You can always earn more money, but you can't earn more time, right? So your ability to manage your money is very, very important. But when everything is said and done, managing your time will become your biggest area of focus and concentration. Because the better and the more efficient, the more effective you use your time, the higher return on your time you're going to get. Okay? Because somewhere along the way, you also want to have some life in that time. Right? All right. So I hope that gives you some idea and some suggestion as to both the budgets, both financially as well as time. It's important that you really spend some time on budgeting that and having some money available for you. It's Is it the end of the world if you don't have a budget? I'm going to say no, provided that you have a really good way to make some money, right? So that's kind of, I've had the good fortune, and I'll leave us with a little story. I had a good fortune to work with some people in the business that were extremely intelligent about how they were doing their business. There was this couple out in Maple Ridge, and they were very, unassuming people, very kind, very gentle, very friendly. And they had figured out that they could run their business with 5 deals a year combinedly. And the way they were doing it and how they were doing it was all based on being very efficient with their time, their money, their energy, and really found a way to enjoy whatever they were doing within that. Okay. Now, today's money at 5 deals a year is it's doable if you don't have a lot of expenses. Now, they didn't have any advertising expenses, and they did a lot of things very manually, but that was by choice, right? That's how they did things, and they were perfectly happy with it. I've seen other people, okay, that do 30, 40, 50 deals and still go broke, okay, because they spend their all of their money in generating that business. So the net bottom line for them isn't really all that much better than doing a few deals with virtually no expenses attached to it. So that's for yourself and in how you want to grow your business, a really important component, right? You're going to invest it in time. You're going to invest it in money. You're going to invest it in a little bit of both, maybe. That's part and parcel of you becoming real estate smart, right? And really, that what this whole program is all about, in context of you becoming a well prepared a person making the decisions whether or not real estate is for you. This phase of becoming real estate business smart is one of the best decisions that you can make for yourself at this point in time, because you're not committed at this point in time, which is fine. You don't need to be. But I want you to look at it with clear eyes and not rosy glasses, and not be intimidated by it either, right? So be realistic about it, and then say, hey, having seen and having said all that, how does this compare with any of the other business opportunities and business directions that I'm looking at? Whether that is, and many of the people that look at real estate will also look at insurance, they look at financial planners, they look at stockbrokers, mortgage brokers. All of those industries are appealing to people that also look at real estate. I know that. And I agree with you. You should look at those things. I've done that. Most other people have done that. I decided on real estate 38 years ago, and I'm still happy with that decision. That doesn't mean that's the right decision for you, right? And for me at the time, keep in mind, I came from retail, so I knew full well what the cost of inventory was. I knew full well what the cost of equipment and staff and space and all of those things were in context and in comparison to me owning a real estate business, my real estate business, my own little licensing practice, right? So I had, in those days, it was about $5,000 to get into business and be set up for a good period of time and be okay. Now, of course, that's a lot more money. But still, to this day, being in real estate as a business opportunity and a career, there's some real opportunities there. Now, I'll leave you with the last bit, which is the opportunity. As you prepare on getting real estate smart, you're going to come across people that want or need to buy or sell right now. It's going to happen because you're excited. Just that aura, that almost by osmosis, by your presence, you're going to encourage people to talk to you about real estate and their plans and their thoughts and yada, yada, yada. Okay, those are opportunities. Unfortunately, you can't make them wait until you're licensed. And even at the best of times, it's going to be 6 to 9 months before you're licensed. Okay, that's just the reality. So, but don't ignore that opportunity. Talk to me, and we can arrange it in such a way, wherever you are, that we can make you some money from that. What we call it referral fees. And there's a proper and legal way to do it. There's a not so legal way to do it. You don't want to go down the not legal way. Okay, you need to do it properly and legally, and then you can, in fact, earn some referral fees. Okay, takes a little bit of prep work, takes a little bit of paperwork, but it can be done, and you need to stay within the boundaries. Because if you go outside of the boundaries, then it may give the regulator a reason for you not to be licensed when you're ready for it. Okay, so that's an important piece to consider, but there is an opportunity there. And I have had the good fortune to help people through those transitions. In fact, we're able to, once they got licensed, pay them all of their educational fees and then some. Right? Wouldn't that be cool? Now, again, don't go out and solicit business because that you cannot do that as an unlicensed person, but there are opportunities. Okay? I hope that it gave you lots and lots of stuff to think about in the financial sense of the world, that you've learned a few things along the way, and, gave you some exercises to do, right? Do your budget, do some projections, do some research, and with the provincial regulator, with the real estate boards, with maybe talk to some brokerages as far as their fee structures and what have you. And don't be afraid to reach out to us, and we're here to help. And I hope to see you at the next episode. Have a fantastic week. All the best.
File saved. The Agent Files. For more missions, agents' tools, and tactical strategies, subscribe and follow the Agent Files, powered by Agent Builder Coaching. Until next time, stay sharp. Your next mission awaits.